In our next couple of examples, we're going to look at two different ways to implement access control on particular nodes for particular users. Now, when we can, we should use the permission system to control access to nodes, but sometimes permissions can be too broad. For example, the module that we've been building up to this point allows us to assign a backup user for a node. Now, the idea is to ultimately allow the backup user to edit nodes that they are the backup user for, but not other nodes that aren't theirs. So in order to do this, we couldn't use the permission system because the permission system requires that a user get assigned a role that gets assigned a particular permission, and that's not granular to the node. It's granular to the types of nodes, for example, but not a particular node. So we need some additional access control for this. Most often, you'll want to run all of the access control on your site that uses granular permissions through a single module. And there's one module that exists in the Drupal contrib repository called ACL, which is short for Access Control Lists, which is the kind of default module that you can use as a central clearinghouse for these permissions. You can find this at project/ACL on Drupal.org. In these examples, what we're going to do is implement our own access control without going through ACL, just so you can see the different levels of permissions that can be granted and how they work. And it's not too complex. To get started, go ahead and jump to your module directory, and we're going to open up the 8th step, which is called Implementing Node Access with Hook Node Access. Go ahead and copy all of the code and paste it over the code that's currently in your stuff.module file. Okay, now we've added a single function to this module called Stuff Node Access, and this is an implementation of Hook Node Access. This hook allows us to perform some type of validation on a user every time a particular action is taken on a particular node. And it takes 3 parameters. The first is the node, which is the node object. The second is the op, or operation, that's being performed on this node. So for example, insert, update, view, etc. And the third is the account that's trying to perform this operation on the node. Okay, so what we're going to do is check to see if this is an update operation. So this is when the user is viewing the node edit screen and saving that form. So we're going to check for that operation. We're going to check to make sure that the account has a name and that the name is the name that's set in the stuff backup user property of the node. And this is the additional information that we've added to the node object in previous examples. And we want to check for empty because if the username is blank, we don't want to give it access. And if that exists, then we're going to set a message that says you're allowed to modify this node because you've been assigned as the backup user. And we're going to return a constant called node access allow. As soon as this constant is returned, then regardless of what other implementations of Hook Node Access say in other modules, the user will get access. And this is the reason to run all of your access control through a single module. And if the user doesn't have this status as the backup user for the node, then we want to return another constant called node access ignore. If we instead returned node access deny, that would deny the user access regardless of what other Hook Node Access functions say. So what this says basically is that we don't have anything to say about access control if the user doesn't meet these certain criteria. Okay, let's go ahead and save this and jump back to our browser. We're going to go ahead and clear our caches to make sure our new function is registered. And let's go ahead and edit one of these nodes. And we're going to set a backup user that doesn't have global permissions to edit content. So I'm calling this user2. And before we save this, let's go ahead and open up another browser. And let's take a look at node / and then the node ID /edit. We're editing node 50 right now. And the user here, this is user2 logged in, gets an access denied error on this page. Now, when we save the backup user for our content in our other browser, this should enable access to this node because the user2 account now is the backup user, and our hook user access will get triggered to give them permission to update the node. Okay, let's go ahead and jump back to the other browser, and we're going to save this with the new backup user. Okay, now let's jump back to the other browser and refresh. So now we're seeing the full edit page here for the node. Now this wouldn't display if the user2 wasn't set as the backup user.